Do you think that we live in a scarcity mindset society?
I think at our base level, we do. I think that it's easy in this time of division to think that way, to think that I have to get mine. I have to, all these things that divide us cause us to think that we have to sort of cluster around and put a fence around what's ours. But when you think about it, that's backwards. You have to, like, even on simple investing, you have to put back into the world to get returns, right? It's like you have to put a seed in the ground to get a tree. Like, it's like basic human principles, basic natural principles of the more you put out there, the more that comes back to you.
Dennis,
Chris, it's such a gift to be here with you.
what does it mean to lead with grace?
I think leading with grace really starts with the belief of believing the best in the people that you're working with and the people that you're serving. I think when we come in with expectations where we come thinking that people need to do something or ought to do something, it's easy to become disappointed. But when you lead with grace, it really is a matter of putting the people that you're serving at the center of it, and then also not knowing what you're responsible for without putting expectations on that group of people or the team that you're leading.
What's the importance of not putting too many expectations on your team, but also making sure that things are getting done and that the ultimate goal is being achieved?
I think it really starts with like almost like a Swiss cheese model, right? Where there's freedom in the framework, where it's like we know where we're going as a group, as a team. We have a very clear vision of where that is, but also not necessarily thinking that we know what the exact direct path is to get there. I spent my career in the disaster relief space. Oftentimes we know that we want to deliver aid, we want to deliver food, we want to get shelter across for people. But no disaster ever goes the way that you think it will. So you have to be super on your feet, problem solving, and working with the different stakeholders to actually deliver results. And I think that's really how you know what the goal is, but at the same time, just be okay with different paths to get to the top of that mountain.
Where did this ability that you have to pivot from the ultimate goal into being able to jump over the obstacles as they come originate? Where did you get that skill from?
You know, I think it all starts like growing. I think it starts with family, right? You growing up in a family with 6 kids, like we always had to be flexible, right? And also we realized it was never about one person right there. It was sort of about the collective good. So I think that's where it started with, like, you have to be flexible. You know what you're doing as a family, but you're not going to get your way when there's 8 different stakeholders, whether it's about where a meal is or where you're heading. But then later, I started my first business when I was 16. This is something small, landscaping, working on farms. But I think when you're running your own business, I'm sure as you probably see as well, things never really go exactly as planned. So you just have to be okay with the ambiguity of it all.
Is there an empowerment to surrendering to that things might not be going the way you want them to?
I think, the thing that I love about this podcast is it's about your core values. And I think when you're living into your core values, that gives you sort of the flexibility to be like, look, if I'm showing up and in a consistent manner with my core values, that's all I really have control over. And that's the only way that you can actually come in and enter a space and know that you did the best that you could with the situation in front of you.
So you've spent a lot of time serving in the disaster relief sector. Is there anything in you that feels drawn to where the crisis is? Like you see so much opportunity to serve and to help, and you're like, where's the fire at? Because I want to go and be a part of putting it out.
Yeah, I think it's really just a love for people, right? I think that's really what draws you into it is like I'm a follower of Jesus, and he always would go and meet people where they were at. And I think that that's something that I draw lessons upon is he would go to where people were at. He would meet them in the moment that they found themselves in. And I think that's where a lot of times that desire to be of service, to be helpful, I think that's what draws me to it is it really is a love for people, trying to understand them and get to know them, and then also meet the moment that we find them in.
As you're meeting people where they're at, perhaps in a place of adversity where they are suffering, how do you meet people where they're at when they are really being adversarial and they're being threatening or perhaps dangerous, or for lack of a better word, like there's some like evilness coming from them? How do you meet people where they're at when you see that?
A big lesson that I learned is the difference between compassion and empathy. And I think when you're in a leadership role, and I think when you're in a disaster relief role or when you're just working with people, it's really important to be compassionate. It's meeting them and connecting with them with where they're at, but also being able to not sit and take that on. Whereas with empathy, you take on the feelings of those people, right? And that can bog you down. But when you are serving or leading or loving, you have to connect and know what they're feeling and be there in the moment with them. But then you also have to transcend that for what you're actually trying to do, which could be delivering services or it could be just helping them become the better version of themselves and live out what their calling is.
What are ways that you're able to decompress as you inadvertently do, while you're being compassionate towards people, you are empathizing and feeling their pain? What are ways that you're able to kind of relax and find peace and comfort after a long day serving?
I think for me, I love relationships. And I think just having a band of brothers who also have the same shared values as you do, or a group of friends, is so important with that because even if things don't go your way and things oftentimes don't, being able to have a tribe of people who know you, who know your heart, and are able to be in relationship with you is really how I think I decompress. I feel really blessed that I have friends who we've been friends for over a decade, and those types of relationships let people really know who you are and know what you're going through as you're taking on sometimes that mantle of leadership.
As you're becoming a leader and a successful leader and building these businesses and running for office, and finding yourself kind of with some influence, and you're kind of maybe higher up on the social totem pole than you were, maybe 15 years ago. Is there any value to that tribe, the bathtub buddies, as you might say, being able to have friends that have known you for so long and seen kind of what you've gone through? Is there value to that rather than, kind of the good time friends you pick up along the way?
I think having folks who know you and will call you out on things is so important, right? And I think, I also think family does that as well. Being one of six kids, no one's going to keep you more accountable than your family. They have seen every single part of your life, and you're just not quite as impressive to them as other folks will. But I think also staying true, and I think one other practice is it's so important to be faithful with the small things, whether it's picking up the trash after an event, whether it's going and serving in the community, and just always, I think if you humble yourself, that's when it keeps you so grounded in all things. And I think it's so important for us as, I don't even love the word leadership, right? I think leaders are called to serve, right? You're called to, it's not about elevating yourself, but it's really about how do I go lower and elevate others, right? And I think the measure of a great leader is how many people can you actually uplift, and the bonus is if they don't even realize that you're doing it. I think that's really, it's like when you're able to unlock things for people so that they can live out what they were made to do.
I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings. Are you familiar?
Of course, yeah.
And there's the Fellowship leaves the Elven city, and Gandalf, the leaders at the front, and then the next seven are carrying the ring. They're supporting the carrier of the ring, and then at the very back is Aragorn, and he's like watching from behind. He's just like making sure that all the little hobbits made over the hill okay. And then they go into this dangerous underground kingdom called Moria, and Gandalf knows that he's gonna be leaving the Fellowship, and he tells Aragorn, the one at the back who's been behind serving at the humble position from the back, go, you must lead them on now. I just think that's so beautiful to be like the person in the back in the humble place. He's the one that should be the leader.
Yeah, I think that's so important to like. I think the more that we see that kind of leadership in society, I think we're going to see the world that we want to be. I'm very hopeful about where the world is going, but I think it's just sort of taking that mantle of like, how can you put others first is really going to be what gets us there.
Do you think we currently have good leaders in charge?
I think that there are a lot of great people doing good things. I will say, with working in the humanitarian disaster poverty space, I've become more and more convinced that we have enough resources, we have enough technology, we have enough supplies to fix every issue in the world. What we are lacking is leadership and character to actually make those things happen. And I think that there are great people doing good things, but I think we need more of that. And I think we need to actually not even put so much weight on our leaders, but also say all of us have a role in that. Like, if we actually want to move society forward, each one of us has a next step. It might be small, it might be big, but nothing's actually too small. If you think about it, what would the world look like if each of us took one step forward towards it, towards loving our neighbor, showing up in our community, caring for our families? If we all did that, we wouldn't need to put so much pressure on these types of leaders.
So, as you know, in this culture that we currently have, where we're always on our phones, always looking to someone to, be the leader, someone to tell us what to do, are we putting too much pressure on the leader when we really could be doing more ourselves?
A really important question that we all have to ask is, what's in your circle of influence, right? What do you have personal agency over? What do you have personal responsibility over? And do you view yourself as a leader in your own work, home, family, whatever it is, where have you been placed in this world? And how are you showing up well with that? I think that that is so important, that we all realize that we all have some form of influence wherever we are. And you can influence up, you can influence down, you can influence to the side. But once people realize that, then they all can actually do something.
So you're saying that you think there's a connection between a knowledge of agency, an awareness of agency, and access?
My grandmother came to this country from Trinidad. Her husband passes away once they get here, and she's a single mom with 7 kids. And she had a 3rd grade education because she went to work when she was 8 years old, right? By all accounts from society, she didn't have much to work with, right? New country, no real support around her. But she showed up to work every day in a factory here in Philadelphia. She still, took her children to church so that they could get a foundation of faith. She, did everything that she could. And by her work and just self-agency that she had, I'm where I'm at today because of those efforts. My siblings all were able to do different things. And, all of those, it's like, what do you have control over in front of you, and how do you do the best with what you got with that? I think that's something I just always try to reflect on, that lesson from my grandmother of, like, even if you don't have a lot, what can you do with that? And I think when you're faithful with that, other opportunities then present themselves.
Do you see something significant that your grandmother did with the access granted to you and your siblings?
I think we all have certain assignments that only we can do, that we are almost called to do. I think that, Chris, there's giftings that you have that only you were made to do. And I think it's important that as folks, whether you're a leader, a parent, or teacher, it's to open up pathways for people to actually be able to do that, to unlock those, to give people the access to the opportunities that really leave an impact in this world, right? And so it all starts with this belief that people are made in the image of God, right? And when you believe that, then you want to unlock things for them to be able to flourish, right? And so I think what my grandmother and what my mother, what my father, what his parents did was they really put a strong foundation of faith in our lives of, like, it's not about you. You know what I mean? It's about the community that you're called to serve. It's about your family. There was sort of a collectivism where you put others first in our family. That was like a big lesson. But when you put others first, it opens up more doors, right? The more you give, the more you receive, the more that life comes back for you. And I just think about that of if you're so focused on what you're in the pursuit of, right? Then you miss out on, like, being able to actually uplift others. When you uplift others, it gives you a rich life. It gives you relationship, all of these benefits that lead to an actual full and what I would consider a wealthy life. True riches in my mind is relationship, right? And so if you actually are putting other people first, relationship comes to you.
Do you think that we live in a scarcity mindset society?
I think at our base level we do. I do think that it's easy in this time of division to think that way, to think that I have to get mine. I think we do live in a time where people feel that way. I think the division from social media, from all these things that divide us cause us to think that we have to sort of cluster around and put a fence around what's ours. But when you think about it, that's backwards. You have to, like, even on simple investing, you have to put back into the world to get returns, right? It's like you have to put a seed in the ground to get a tree. Like, it's like basic human principles, basic natural principles of the more you put out there, the more that comes back to you. It's like common sense, but it's also hard.
Are there any ways that you kind of might actively practice this this way that you were raised of putting the focus off of yourself and onto others, understanding that people are made in the image of God? Are there any ways that you kind of practice this to remind yourself of that actively?
Yeah, I think I'm a big goal setter. I'm a big fan of just sort of like where are you putting your finances, right? What's your generosity plan? What's your giving plan? Also, like, I think time and money are the two most valuable commodities. So, like, you show me where your money's going and where your time's going, and that shows you what's important to you and what you actually value, right? And so for me, it's making sure that each year I try to increase my giving. It also is like also making sure that I make time, and whether it's simple things like once a week seeing my parents and spending time with them and building relationship with them, or once a month serving in this capacity. It's really about scheduling time to give back and making a part of your daily practice in a lot of ways.
How does giving generously increase opportunity?
I think when you give generously, it makes you realize that these resources aren't yours to hold on to, but it's yours to steward, right? And when you actively, it's freeing. When everything's a mindset, right? When you're like, whose is this? Is this mine, or is this coming from God? And like, I trust where those come from, where those resources come from. I remember there was a time when I was working at a local church down in Washington, D.C., and I only had $60 left in my bank account. And I remember I felt like Jesus was like, hey, buy $5 gift cards for everyone on staff. And I remember I did that, and I was like, well, I don't have any more cash. And like, it was a year of service. So I was like, we'll see how this goes. And somebody called me back for the first time in 5 years that I hadn't talked to him. And he was like, Den, I've been in and out of jail twice, but I wanted to pay you back the $1,700 that you loaned me when we were in college together. And it just like blew my mind. Where I was like, we think we're in control of our resources. We think we know where things are coming from. But at the end of the day, we're really not in as much control as we think. So I think when you live out those values of care for others, love for others, generosity, it gives you a mental peace, because you know that it's not going to come from your own efforts at the end of the day.
Yeah, I have this great mentor, super cool dude. He runs a nonprofit, and same thing. It was there's a lot of expenses, and he wasn't sure how he was going to cover those. And last minute, a donor called up and provided the funds. And then he had a friend say, you know what, I'm seeing this nonprofit you're doing, and the money came in right at the same time. I think God really is honoring this work that you're doing, and He's blessing this vision you have. And my friend, my mentor Bob, said, "You've got it all wrong. It's God's work.
Yeah,
It's not my work. It's
100%.
I have the blessing to be a part of it."
Exactly. I think when what that point is so correct, of like seeking what is God up to right now in our world, in our families, in our communities, and then just join Him on that. Like, be a part of it. See where there's already fruit coming out of something, and join in that. Like, I think we put so much pressure on us creating the solution, where oftentimes the solution is already permeating somewhere, and it's like the gift that we have is to be able to blow and fan that in. So I think it takes slowing down and being a little present to be able to, and asking the right questions. I think you're so amazing, Chris, at asking good questions. But I think it's so important that all of us stop and ask those questions of like, what kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of world do I want to be a part of? And what's my role in helping create that place?
Well, I believe in the butterfly effect that, like the tiniest little flap of wings can cause.
Yeah.
Given all of this that we're talking about, it's God's work. It's not our work. It's God's money, not our money. But you really want to make an impact, and you want to be a part of that. Tell me that dichotomy.
I think for me, it all comes down to the question of stewardship and being faithful, right? I think it trust God with the results, but it's like, what are we called to show up and do each day, right? We're called to love our neighbor. We're called to care for those who are marginalized, and we're called to be good stewards of what we've been given. And for me, when I think about the sacrifices that my family's made for the gifts that my parents have given me, my mom always told me, you have one life to give, right? And so it's like, gosh, so much has been given to me already that it's compelling of like, well, how am I going to utilize this to be a blessing to other people? It really comes down to that. So like, I feel like we can trust God with the impacts, but it's not necessary. Like, we don't have to worry about what the impact is, but we do need to faithfully show up every day. And when something's put in front of us, we need to like do something about it in a lot of ways. I think back to there's a story that always sticks with me about how I love Mother Teresa's quote of, if you do the little things do the little things with lots of love. And I just think about that. I was at a event when I used to work at a group called Food for the Hungry that does work in 21 countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America. And I remember I was at an event and there was a doctor speaking there who he was from Kenya and he had clinics across 13 countries in East Africa. Amazing impact. And I remember feeling small. I was like, man, that's somebody who's doing the real work. Like I was a fundraiser for Food for the Hungry. I was a partnership guy there. I was like, I don't know what, that's somebody who's really has big impact. And this doctor comes up to me at the end of his talk and he goes, I see you work for Food for the Hungry. I go, yeah, I do. And he goes, I want you to know that I was a sponsor child in the 80s and 90s in Kenya from Food for the Hungry. And it was that investment in me and that investment in education and the fact that I felt loved that caused me to go do this. And when I think about how some family probably in Michigan or Wisconsin was like, sending their $28 a month to just do this, which, in the grand scheme of things is a small amount, the ripple effect that faithfulness had, right? They probably never met this guy. They probably never knew that years later he would have all these clinics, but they were just faithful with what was in front of them. And I think sometimes we can trust God with the results of, sometimes we just need to show up, right? And do what we have. And we'll figure out eventually, I believe in heaven, I think we'll figure it out there of like what God allowed us to be a part of on earth. And it's probably a lot cooler than we thought. But it does take just showing up.
How does it make you feel when you see the impact that you made in someone's life?
I think I feel humbled to be a part of it in a lot of ways. I think one of my pure joy moments was after Hurricane Maria. I took a team of like 22 strangers down to Puerto Rico, and we were working out there, clearing debris, building roofs, that kind of thing. And as somebody I was young then, I was in my mid-20s and really had no idea what I was doing. And the time that on the last day, we had been there for about a week. On the last day, this group of strangers who didn't know each other from Adam when they first got there were all laughing, talking, interacting with the members of the community. And I remember on our last night just sort of stepping back and realizing that I'd been allowed to help facilitate that. And years later, I've been to many of their weddings. I've seen them have children. And it was like when you see a group of strangers actually, like, some of them left their corporate jobs and then committed their lives to lives of service. And so I think it's just showing up. You have no idea how just a week could make such a big difference in my own life too. So I think it just makes me excited to see when that impact actually happens, and also not knowing what exactly it will turn into over the next few years.
How can doing a service project like in a dangerous or a hazardous environment like the one you just talked about bless the people that are working on it?
I think you always leave more blessed than the blessings that you did. I think it humbles you. I think it puts life in perspective. I think that there's so much beauty and goodness and truth in the heart of a disaster that it just reminds you. I was in Jamaica recently with Hurricane Melissa, and I went out and we were visiting a tin house that had lost its roof. Miss Mary, who was living there, was a blind woman, and it was a one-room house. It lost its roof, and she, that night when it happened, was holding her two grandbabies on the bed and heard pop, 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 pop of the nails pulling out of the roof and the roof just flying off and it pouring down. That would have been terrifying for anyone. But imagine if you couldn't see and you're holding a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old next to you. Hearing that story moved me to tears because she kept telling us, God is good. And I'm like, you literally lost everything and you're still telling me God is good, you know? And I just think about that of like, I feel so privileged to be able to like able to experience that and see just the resilience of communities and just the way that I think you see the best of people in those situations because it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone is willing to come together and work together for the good of their neighbor. And I think it sometimes takes a situation like that.
When did you know that you would be running for public office?
I remember June 14th, 2017. I felt it in my soul like a calling to step into the arena at some point. Like I said, my faith is a big part. And I remember when I felt that, it really shook me because I was like, Lord, I don't really want to do that. My background at that time, in 2017, I worked in the private sector. And then also I was getting ready to transition to working at a local church in DC. And so I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't want to be in politics. I want to love people and I want to serve people. And then, so that was when I felt like a calling to that, and I wanted to be faithful with it. I didn't know when the opportunity was going to come, but I moved back to Philadelphia then. I went to government school at night at the University of Pennsylvania, and just started serving and started listening in the city. Started serving on the Philly House Board, started working with Philly Gospel Movement, start working to help raise funds to keep kids out of the foster care. And I was like, first, let's serve and listen to communities. Don't worry about the public office, but just be prepared that when a door opens up, that you can step into it.
What is it about serving and leading, with hurricane relief or serving at a nonprofit? What are the skills that you learn through those roles make for a good leader in government as opposed to, a great legal background or a great English degree or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that having the ability I think when you're responding to a disaster or doing humanitarian work, it's really about extending the table and seeing what people have to offer to help with the problem at hand. Right? Somebody might have helicopters, somebody might have food, somebody might have chainsaws, whatever it is, but everybody has something and we got to work together on this. I think the same thing can be said for a lot of the challenges we see in society today, that we have systematic problems. So we need system solutions for it. And government can't fix these problems. Business can't fix these problems. Nonprofits certainly can't fix these problems. We all have a role to play. And so what government's role is to actually set the table and help convene people to actually find solutions for these challenges that we have. Having people on the ground who understand communities, who can implement, being able to bring in dollars from outside, working with the private sector to build up, sustainability. There's so many different pieces that need to come together to actually build a thriving society, and that's the role of government.
What are some challenges that you've run into running for office that you have not seen before?
Yeah, I think like when you're showing up to do something like that, like fixing a tin roof or something, you know what the clear goal is, right? Our clear goal with wanting to be in office is together serving our city, right? It's about unifying people, calling people to their better angels, and having them take their next step. That's a big part of it. However, to get there, there's a lot of different things you got to do, like from getting signatures, from being able to tell your story, to listening to communities, to raising money, all of these different things. There's so many different skills required for it, especially when you're a bootstrap team. We're running as independents because we want to put people over party, right? But that choice that we made lacks some of the infrastructure that other campaigns might have. So a lot of the ways it's like building a startup business, and it just takes a lot, and it takes a diverse team to get it done too, which has been really the fun part of it.
What are you so excited to do once you're in office?
I think I'm excited to actually bring like love and kindness back into this area. I think for years I've been hearing, we've got to fight, we've got to fight, we've got to fight. And that sounds so exhausting to me. I think we're at a time in our nation's history where we need to build, where we need to bring people together. It's literally in our name. We are the United States of America. We need to get back to that unity as a nation where we don't have to agree about everything, but we can see the good in people, see that people are created in the image of God, and actually love them. We don't have to agree on everything, but come together. I think that's what I'm excited to actually work on that. One story that I love is the story of William Wilberforce, right? He was a young parliamentarian that dismantled the transatlantic slave trade. It took him 40 years to do, which is crazy. But I love the fact that he committed his life to changing the collective consciousness of his nation. And he saw his dream come true 3 weeks before he died. And so what I would love to see is our country come back to a place where we actually love one another, where we actually are united, where we care for those who are marginalized and are creating a future that's actually flourishing. And I think it's not about one election. It's about taking a 20, 30-year vision and a commitment to actually walking that step by step.
Yeah, it's planting the tree that you may not live to sit under its branches.
100%.
What is it that divides us and keeps us from being a united states?
When we don't see each other's value. I think it really comes to the othering. And I think when you separate somebody as this person because they believe this is not worth my time or they're less than me, I think that's what really divides us. I always come back to family. I grew up in a big family. Half of them are more conservative, half of them are more liberal. And they're all great people, and we can all share a meal. We definitely don't all agree on different political things, or even like views of society, but that doesn't mean that they're any less. They're still my brothers and my sisters.
How can you collaborate and bring this kindness together while also making impact when people are so angry about a certain thing? They're so convicted that there's this riveting emotion. There's two people and they're so convicted about opposing something that's an opposing view on something. How do you, because you can't make them be kind. You can't make anyone do anything. I think we could probably agree on that.
Yeah,
how do you
100%.
inspire kindness, and how do you inspire access, opportunity, and impact when you have two groups that are so passionate?
Yeah, I think one of my mentors told me you can get anything done you want as long as you're okay not getting the credit for it. And I think it's so true of like, think about the world you want to live in, humble yourself, help people achieve those different goals, and be okay not getting the credit for it. You know, I think there's so much resources that are pinned up and don't actually make their way to Philadelphia because people don't want an administration to get credit for sending those. And vice versa. I mean, that's not an indictment on either side, but I think it's like, what is our role here? And it's to care for the people who've entrusted us to represent them. And I think that's really, it starts with kindness, humility. And I think when you're representing people, you can be bold. When you are living out your values, you can be bold. It's kindness and love is not weakness. Like it is conviction. And it shows you that like, I care so much about all of us that I'm willing to do the hard work, to serve, to advocate, to call out hypocrisy, and invite people to be a part of the process and build a bigger table.
Yeah, I think the Bible says, to the lowest of these people, you've treated me. It's like Christ was the representative of those that were most in need. Yeah. So, Dennis, I have this curious question. So why did you select to run as an independent when you probably could have been taken advantage of more resources and it would have been a bit easier if you towed a certain party line and kind of, flowed in the one, jumped into the stream that had more energy in it?
Yeah. 47% of Americans feel like the two-party system doesn't represent them fully. I think that there are good ideas can come from anywhere. I think as long as we are uplifting people, we're at a time where Philadelphia is the second largest poor city in America. That's crazy. We've been the poorest large city in America for over 20 years. And so it's important that we actually don't put ideology in the way of actually serving the people. Like, kids are dying in our city. People are going to bed hungry every night. I think I don't have the exact numbers, but I think 1 in 4 children in Philadelphia suffer from food insecurity in America. Like, this is crazy. The life difference between living in Nicetown in Philadelphia and living in Rittenhouse is 18 years. You have that difference of life expectancy, and they're less than a mile apart. So, like, for me, the reason I chose to go as an independent was I was like, I want to work with anyone who wants to make Philadelphia a better place, who wants to put District 3 in a place where people can actually live flourishing lives and kids aren't afraid that they're going to get shot when they leave their block.
Yeah. How do you bring peace and everything that you just said to District 3 without stomping on the culture of all very, very integrated individual neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think it comes from a posture of humility, comes from a posture of listening. It comes from a understanding of community agency, right? The people who live in, West Philadelphia know what West Philadelphia needs. The people in North Philadelphia know what North Philadelphia needs. There's already amazing servant leaders in those parts of the city. There already are people doing the work. And so the role of a congressional member is to bring back resources to those people who know their communities, know what's needed, and really just help fan into flame what is already going on in those areas. I'll just add to that Philadelphia doesn't need another hero politician. It needs all of us to take our next step. And the role of a public servant is to actually do that. It's to put that.
Yeah, it's not just to redistribute resources. You don't like the word lead. What are we going to use interchange lead with? Inspire.
I mean, it's to serve, right?
To serve.
It really is just to serve at the end of the day.
How have you been feeling supported on this campaign so far? And tell me a little bit about your staff.
So one of the greatest gifts of this campaign is the ability to really be in close relationship with our canvassers. We need to get 6,800 signatures just to get on the ballot, and probably triple that because they're going to be because that's just how Philadelphia is. And so we've been working with a lot of these young guys from North Philadelphia, from West Philadelphia. A lot of them are 19 to 25 years old. And one of the greatest gifts of this campaign is to learn a little bit about their world, their views, because I think they're the future, right? They're the future leaders. And a lot of these guys have a lot of hard things going on. It's really hard for them to make a living. It's really hard for them to have hope. Some of them are single fathers and are trying to take care of their children. And when I think about that, I one of our canvassers was actually murdered over a few weeks ago, or not a few weeks ago. It was over the 4th of July weekend. And those are the realities that so many people in Philadelphia are living with, right? The lack of safety, the trying to make ends meet. And I think what we need to do is think about what is the loving thing for them. Not what's our ego as a political leader or trying to get some time in front of a camera, but really, how do we care for those communities and make sure that those young men and young women who are coming out every day and serving alongside us actually feel like they have a vision for where they can go and for what's possible for them. And so I think that's been one of the greatest gifts and one of the greatest reminders is being in the trenches with these folks. And, we're up on the L stops at 6:30 in the morning in 110-degree heat. And it's just there's something about when you're in the trenches with folks that you get close. And that's what really gives me a fire for what we're doing. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. I tell my family, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But there's such a joy in when you're doing it with these young folks and you see that they want to actually build a better future together with you. And it's not about power or influence. They're just they're trying to make it, and you want to make it for them, with them.
Where did you connect with these canvassers?
It's funny. A lot of them I met when I was out there on the train. They literally were like, "What are you doing?" And then they joined, and we've just been rocking together, and it's been fun. Like one of my greatest joys was we have these weekly appreciation dinners for our team, right? And being able to gather and celebrate the wins is just, and also, sometimes talk about the challenges is really big too. And I think building that community among these young folks, it just keeps me grounded on the why behind what we're doing.
Yeah. Do these canvassers feel like excited for you to be the representative soon?
I think it's better if it comes from them, but a lot of them have told me they're like, hey, we don't have folks showing up in North Philly at 10 o'clock at night to make sure our families are okay. And, I don't say that to toot my own horn, but it's really about like proximity and relationship is what I think makes a great servant. And I think being in relationship, I think they are seeing something different about us running as independents and putting the people first.
How can we help? How can we support your campaign?
I would say just join us. So Mahoney for Congress is the way that you can sign up and come out and volunteer with us, donate to the cause, be a part of it. But really, we want to be in relationship with folks. So come out, join our events. And really, I think what my desire isn't necessarily for the campaign, but if you feel inspired by what we're doing, love your neighbor, get to know the people around you, care for your community. You don't need us to do that, right? All of us have that next step. And I think it just takes stopping for 2 minutes and being like, what can I do today to care for those around me? And I think if we all do that, Philadelphia will continue to be the best city in America.
Wow. Dennis, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Chris, thank you for this gift. This was awesome.